Hello and welcome to the Console Kingdom. My name is Jared,
And I am Dan.
and we are here with you on this wonderful afternoon, evening, or morning whenever you decide to listen. And we have got a great episode for you. Dan, I have been talking to you about this for a little bit. We've been talking about sharing some of our memories from the past about video games and things like that. I'm really excited for this episode. It's actually really exciting for me because I've had such great memories throughout the years. Being a retro gamer, I guess, is what you would call myself now, because I grew up on the Nintendo. You grew up on Nintendo as well, did you not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many great games that were on the Nintendo, from Nintendo Hard to Nintendo Normal, and just such great times that were had from all ends of the spectrum in gaming during that era. I felt it really important to kind of share a little background from our lives with our listeners to just kind of get them a piece of ourselves, of who we are and where we come from.
Yeah, man, definitely.
So I kind of wanted to ask you, what was your first memory when it comes to gaming? Like, what was the first game you ever played?
I think the earliest video game memory that I have, believe it or not, is a computer game.
Okay.
So I don't think we had, I'm trying to remember what came first. I don't know if the Nintendo came first or the computer game came first, but I remember when I was a kid, we had a computer in the house, which I think at that time wasn't all that common. And we had a game that I later on, was trying to remember and find out what it was. It was called Spider-Bot.
Okay.
And it was, a DOS game, and you walk around this little robot. And like as you get, farther and deeper into the game, you collect parts to upgrade your Spider-Bot. And by the end of the game, you're shooting webs and you're climbing on walls. And I think that's the first game I ever played. I think. But I could be getting that a little fuzzy because I do remember vaguely, and this is a very fuzzy memory for me. I do remember one night my dad coming home with a Nintendo. And I had no idea what a Nintendo was at that point. I was like 5 or 6 maybe. Because I'm trying to
Okay.
think when the NES first sort of appeared. Um, I know it was in a test market in New York City around '85, so I think it was a little after that because I think I was older than 5 at the time. So yeah, he brought this thing home. I had no idea what it was. Brought it home from my oldest sister, who connected it to the little pink television in her bedroom. It's about a 9-inch screen, a little pink television, and it didn't have dials, but it had like a row of buttons on the top, and each button on top of the TV was a channel. And it just had like the 12 channels,
Okay.
and we played Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt on that. So I don't know if Spider-Bot came first. I already had some experience with video games, but I do remember my dad bringing the Nintendo home, and what a big deal that was, and what a big deal that became, shortly thereafter, where everybody was playing Nintendo.
Yeah, I likewise in your situation, about the same situation as what you had. I had a Nintendo myself, and my first game that I ever played was Super Mario Brothers. And I remember just dying all the time. And one of my favorite memories I have from that game was finally beating the game and getting some ridiculous score that was insane. And then I had to call up my cousin and brag about it. It was like, oh, here's this 6-year-old kid who just beat your high score. you know, he was kind of mad, but it was still great. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, within like a couple of years of that, I mean, we had a Nintendo in every bedroom. There was one in my sister's room, and then I shared a room with my other sister. We had a Nintendo in there, and then later on we moved, and I had my own room, and I had a Nintendo in there. So there was always a Nintendo for quite some time, and I think by that time, I mean, that was kind of like Nintendo Mania was sweeping the nation. And for any listeners who weren't around back then or don't remember, it went from like video games didn't exist in the US hardly to everybody had a Nintendo. And that's what everybody was playing. All the kids talked about Nintendo games at school. I sat there waiting to get home to play my Nintendo. It was all the rage. We had Nintendo cereal, Nintendo cartoons. Nintendo was running the world in the mid to late 1980s.
Absolutely. See, I remember watching TV and seeing some of the old commercials for like Tetris and Super Mario Brothers and things like that. And it was everywhere. It was everywhere. I remember, in fact, there was a cereal promotion, and I can't remember if it was Cheerios or I don't remember which cereal it was, but you bought the box of cereal, and inside the box was printed the map from The Legend of Zelda, so it showed where all the secrets were and everything like that. So that was pretty awesome. I remember that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It wasn't long after that Ralston came out with the the Nintendo cereal system, which was Super Mario Brothers cereal on one side of the box, and then on the other side of the box was the Legend of Zelda cereal. I don't remember what they tasted like, but I do remember the box.
Big time nostalgia there for sure. And I remember going to places like Funko Land. Do you remember Funko Land? And getting games. That Funko, was pre-game stuff.
Yeah, I think GameStop eventually grew out of FuncoLand or acquired. I don't know. FuncoLand, all the FuncoLand locations around me eventually did become GameStops. So maybe there was an acquisition there. I don't really know the details of it. I can definitely tell you that when it came to Nintendo, I had a friend, my neighbor across the street. I remember going over to the bus stop, and I would go to his house, real quick before we got on the bus, and he'd be playing Mega Man 2, like, before school. Which to me was so weird because I couldn't play video games in the morning before school. Like, I just couldn't do it because I wouldn't be able to pull myself away from it.
Yeah, and speaking of, I mean, that's how I remember the story I got to share with you and our listeners. When I was a kid, I remember renting Mega Man 2 over a weekend or something like that, and it was due Monday something or other. Monday night, I would say. And I remember getting up at like 5 in the morning on Monday before school and just playing that crap out of Mega Man and turning the volume way, way down to make sure I didn't wake up my parents. And unfortunately, my parents woke up anyway, and I got in trouble for that. But I remember dreaming about it the night before, and it was like I woke up and I'm like, I don't even care what time it is. I have to go play this game.
Yeah, I remember I rented the original Mega Man from the local corner video store, and Gutsman's level still haunts my nightmares. With the platforms in the beginning.
Oh yes, the dropping platforms.
Mega Man. I still think Mega Man games are way too hard.
The Iceman level was my downfall because sometimes it would glitch, and those platforms that you had to jump on over that endless bottomless pit, if you didn't have the magnet beam, you would jump straight through them and die. That was always fun.
I think it was Mega Man 4, if I remember correctly. There was like I don't know if it was like a glitch or it was like an intentional cheat, but if you like hold down, I forgot how to do it. You have to like hold A and B and then jump in a pit on purpose. And if you did that, then you would become invincible.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I found that out at my friend Sean's house. I had a friend, my friend Sean, who we used to play Nintendo together and hang out together. He was, my best friend when I was a little kid. And he's also the first person that ever told me about Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
And that was kind of special when one day I went over to his house and he's like, "Have you heard of this game, Mortal Kombat?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" He's like, "I was playing it at the bowling alley. And I was this guy called Ragin, and I shot lightning out of my hands." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." And he's like, "And there's blood." There's what now?
Did you
So of course,
Did you hear about the new Mortal Kombat music? No,
No?
it's based off of Finland. It's based off some Finland music. It's called a Finnish hymn. Oh, come on. You know you got that, Joe. A Finnish
I
hymn.
got it. It's clever. It's clever. Yeah, all right. Anyway, so all right, we're one dad joke in, but yeah, man. So of course, then he like begged his dad to take us to the bowling alley so that I could experience Mortal Kombat for the first time and see, the game where you throw a rope at somebody and say, "Come here," and there's blood all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Punch, you do the high punch and like 16 gallons of blood just come flying out of the guy's nose.
See, I remember when I was a kid, we went to on Black Friday with my aunt and my uncle. They were trying to get a good deal on some electronics or something, and we went to. Um, at the time, I think it was either Circuit City or Best Buy. I want to say it was probably Best Buy that we were at. And they were trying to get a computer or something. I can't remember what they were trying to get. But I remember one of my first experiences with Killer Instinct was there. And I remember playing Killer Instinct while I waited for them to do their thing. Because, back then they had those demo games that you could play.
Yeah.
And your neck hurt afterwards because you're like wrenching at your neck back because you had to see the TV.
I remember looking up the TV in Walmart to play those games. They do have Nintendo Switch demos in Walmart. It's not the same. It's not the same as having to look up at the screen that's basically on the ceiling at the top of the game case. Killer Instinct was cool though. I really liked that one. I played that a lot back in the day. And then of course I played against my friend Billy's brother Kevin and never wanted to play again because that kid was insane. My friend Billy's brother Kevin, like I was a mega Super Nintendo freak by that point in middle school, and I couldn't even I couldn't win one round against this kid in Killer Instinct. Like what he would do is he would go to the video store on Friday, rent a game, and then play it seriously all weekend. I don't even know if he slept. And by the end of the weekend, by the time the weekend was over, whatever they had rented, whatever he was playing, he would have finished it. He would have completed it. He was a video game like savant. It was out of this world. I remember going over there and playing Saturday Night Slam Masters a lot. That was a really popular one for us, and Super Punch Out, which I still play, which is still a fantastic game. Mike Tyson's Punch Out on the NES is still one of my favorite games of all time. It's a fantastic game. It's tremendous. But the big memory I have of going to Billy's house was we would play Mario Paint. Do you remember Mario Paint at all?
I do.
It was kind of hard to do anything really good in there. Like there was a whole Nintendo Power feature and it showed some amazing things like this incredibly detailed drawing of Link where they use the animation tool to make a hand like throw magic at the shield and then have it like explode. That was really impossible to actually do. I don't know how they did that. But what we did is we used the stamper tool. Do you remember the stamper tool in Mario Paint where it was like Mario's body was one stamp and his head was another one?
Yeah.
So we would take the stamper tool and then we would like use the other tools to recolor them. And we took the Mortal Kombat characters, we turned them into Mario Kombat.
Nice.
So we had like Luigi. Most of them weren't that clever though. It was like Morpion, sub Mario, but you get the idea. So that was fun. And we would make little animations where they, do fatalities and, Mario knocking Luigi's head off. But he was, Luigi with a headband and turning into a dragon.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, man, I had a buddy of mine, his name was Mike, and I'd go over to his place and we'd play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like religiously all the time, from the first game to the arcade game to the Manhattan Project. It was, we'd be playing those games all the time because he had a Nintendo just like I did. and I'd bring over my Turtles games, and he'd have his Turtles games, and we just, oh my gosh, we beat him, and then we play the next one, we beat it. It was just one of those things, and then that was actually my first experience with Final Fight, um, but not in the sense of Final Fight. You see, Nintendo, they made a NES version
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
Final Fight called Mighty Final
Yeah,
Fight.
fun game.
And I remember playing that a lot by his place too. That was
I
awesome.
remember like my mind was completely blown when my neighbor Jason, when I was a kid, he could beat Ninja Turtles and I couldn't. I could never get past the dam like most of us couldn't. Most of us couldn't get past the dam. Of course, now you mentioned the dam and everyone's like, psh, easy. I beat that in my sleep. But back then, no, you didn't. And I have a sad memory with Ninja Turtles too, but I'll tell you that in a minute. But yeah, so he finished the whole game on like a Saturday morning. I just like hung out and watched him play and watched him finish the game, and I was just blown away. My mind was completely blown. I just couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah, that's still one of those games to this day that I've gotten so close to beating and then can't
It's such a
because
cheap game.
I'll game over.
It's such a cheap game though. It's not a fair game. It's really not. Like it's Nintendo hard in the wrong way. It's like it's not hard
Right.
because it's like legitimately challenging. It's hard because they put like way too much shit on the screen and then make you have to do jumps that make no sense to get past half of it. It's not a well designed game like by any stretch of the imagination. But I think my biggest like NES memories though really were Deadly Towers was a big one. And that game gets a really bad rep, but I think it's actually a pretty good game. Have you ever played Deadly Towers on the NES?
I did not. That was not one that I was familiar with.
People don't like it because there's a bunch of invisible entrances to the dungeon, and the dungeon is like very difficult to get out of. So you'll accidentally get into the dungeon, and then to get out of it, you have to find the exit, and the exit is usually very, very far away from where the entrance is. And sometimes it's actually very, very close, but you don't know which door is the exit. So you could be lost in one of these dungeons for an entire day, like with no problem at all, and never get out of it. And that's what happened to most people playing the game, which is why most of them didn't like it. But if you know where those dungeons are, and you know how to avoid getting put in one when you don't want to be in one, and if you have a map of the dungeon, then the game becomes a lot easier. You can just stay out of the dungeons entirely, and complete the game. Uh, and another one, and I think because my sister, who was the first person to get the NES, was really into like D&D at the time. Wizards and Warriors was the other one that we played a lot of. That one we
Okay.
played a lot of in my house.
Yeah.
I remember playing that on like a Friday night, and then like stop playing to watch Full House.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That was a good one too, man. That was another really another hard game, and it's one of those games that I think a lot of people don't really necessarily have very fond memories of, just because it was a reasonably popular game, but it wasn't like a massively popular game. So I don't think a lot of people have played it or have good memories. I know like 2 and 3 people seem to really have good memories with. I don't really like 2 or 3, but the original I enjoyed quite a bit.
It had great music. Absolutely amazing
Yeah,
music.
I was just thinking about the music. But speaking of the music too, the Deadly Towers music used to scare the ever loving hell out of me when I was a kid. It had if you waited at the title screen in Deadly Towers, there was this 8-bit bell. It was like bum
Okay.
bum 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 bum, and that for some reason scared me to death when I was a kid. And
Well,
then
I
like the
mean,
main thing that played behind it was like a really spooky, creepy sort of a tune. Yeah, that absolutely terrified me as a child. I would hide if my sister would play it.
but you got to think of it like this too. I mean, you go to the arcade and you had Sinistar,
Hmm.
and people were afraid of Sinistar.
Yeah, there was also it was what's that? What's that? Satan's Hollow was another arcade game that was a little bit scary just because it's called Satan's Hollow. It's like you're playing a devil
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Do you remember? Do you remember Maniac
Yeah,
Mansion?
I remember that one. That was like a point and click DOS game that they ported to the NES. Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good.
Um, and we were talking.
Give the tentacle of Pepsi.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I remember. I never played that until I was older, but I remember reading the feature in Nintendo Power because I religiously was subscribed to Nintendo Power. I wish I still had all those Nintendo Powers, man. They go for a mint on eBay nowadays. I had like the first
Oh,
I had like
sure.
the first 2 years of Nintendo Power. I had a subscription from day one. I don't know how that came to be. I think when they were promoting the magazine early in its life, they were giving out a lot of like subscriptions, and I think we were one of the first households to subscribe to Nintendo Power magazine, and I had the first like 24 issues. I actually purchased a copy of the Final Fantasy strategy guide from the Nintendo Power on eBay a couple years ago because I wanted to have it again. And I was looking, I was like, can I get these again? But they're very expensive, all those Nintendo Powers. And Nintendo Power was great, man. I used to bring it to school
Oh,
and at
yeah.
lunchtime. I loved Nintendo Power.
I did not subscribe to it, but I had the Mario 3 one.
I remember the first
The strategy guide from Mario
I remember
3.
the first issue, man. We had that sitting in our living room, in our living room table for a long time with the claymation Mario 2 on the cover. That's like a couple $100 now, I think, on eBay. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, that was serious business. And like the Game Boy came out right around the same time that came out. I know you mentioned Tetris before. The Game Boy, man, whew, you could not get that Game Boy away from my dad once he started playing Tetris. And my dad was not a gamer. My dad never played video games. The only times I ever saw that man play video games were when we had Tetris on the Game Boy, and when we had at his office, my dad used to run a taxi company, and in their shop for a little while they had two arcade cabinets. It was Mario Brothers and Centipede, and I don't think he had them for very long. I think he got rid of them. Yeah, with that before he had them for too long. So I remember playing them like once or twice, and then they were gone. So I don't know if it was like maybe the guys in the shop were playing them too much, not not getting work done. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, but there's sometimes I heard my dad play video games. Oh, speaking of arcade games, do you remember? Well, I don't know if you had anywhere where you lived. So over here where I live, we have a ferry that goes across. There's two ferries that you can get on over here. One goes from Port Jefferson to Bridgeport, Connecticut, and the other one goes from Greenpoint to Mystic. I don't think it lands in Mystic, but it lands like somewhere around. It lands like Mystic Seaport. So I don't remember exactly what we did or where we were going. I don't know, but I remember we took the ferry somewhere. And on the ferry, they had like a full arcade. They had like multiple arcade games on the ferry. That was cool. That was
Nice.
very cool.
Yeah, we had malls. We had the arcades at the mall.
Yeah, there was Time Out at the Smith Haven Mall. There's an arcade actually in the mall here now at Smith Haven Mall. An arcade. Um, it was started by the same guy who has a couple of game stores, and I think they're actually called Game On. He has a couple of video game stores, like used video game stores out here, and he started this arcade, and it's kind of cool. So they have all like original genuine arcade machines. They have like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and X-Men and older stuff too. They have a Tapper machine. They have a bunch of Play Choice 10 machines. They've got older pinball games, a lot of great stuff in there. And it's a pay one price and you play all day. I think it's like 30
Okay.
bucks for an adult and 20 bucks for a kid or something like that. So it's a little expensive, but you can play as much as you want, and all the cabinets are turned on to free play mode. So you go in, you play as much as you want. You can go out, like go shopping, have lunch, come back and play again later. You can play all day off of that 20 bucks or 30 bucks or whatever. So that's pretty cool that that's there. It's a nice throwback
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
for me.
That's actually a pretty good deal, really, considering you got a flat rate and then it's free play for basically the whole
I mean, if you go
day.
to like Dave and Buster's or whatever, you'll spend $100 no problem. So
Oh, easily.
we go to there's a place near us called actually a chain. So you may have seen them. You ever seen Round One?
Yes, I've heard of
Round
them.
one is really cool, and there's one out here that we've gone on a couple of date nights there, and I mean they have they have games, they have bowling, they have like Japanese games, Japanese crane games, which are insane. Like the Japanese crane game will be like pick up this ping pong ball, and you have to drop the ping pong ball like with the crane arm, and then you get a prize. Forget it, it's ridiculous. But those places are amazing. But yeah, you'll spend hundreds of dollars there. You'll drop so much money. It's not even a problem. So yeah, $20, $30 a person to play video games all day is not a bad deal, especially because you can leave and come back. You know, you can make a day of it. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. I mean, I wish they had that when I was
Yeah.
growing up. I remember that they had that promotion at the mall by me, by where I grew up. Um, when I was a teenager, it was a place called
Hmm.
Kahunaville, and it was kind of like a Hawaiian themed restaurant, like kind of a tropical island themed restaurant. It was really
That's kind of
cool,
funny, actually.
and
I'll tell you.
on one side, because they had two sides of the mall. On the one side was the restaurant, and on the other side was the arcade. And they had pinball and arcade games. They would turn all that on to free play except for the ticket
Mm-hmm.
games, and you'd pay a flat rate, and then you'd play as much as you wanted.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that it had like the Kahuna theme because there's a place near. There's a place that we've been to called I think it's like Tiki Golf or something. It's like a mini golf place, but they have a tiki theme, and it's also an arcade, which was a really interesting place to go to recently because every place now has like cards you swipe. This place actually had all machines that were still taking tokens. Like it was kind of
Man,
cool, but also it felt kind of janky because it wasn't like, oh, we're doing this for nostalgia's sake. It was more like, oh, we're doing this because the owner hasn't bothered to update anything in 25 years.
gotcha. But still, I mean that's one of the biggest things that I miss is those token action games, like where you go into an arcade and you'd play something like Wonder Wheel,
Hmm.
or oh, I can't remember what it's called, but you'd put the token in to go down and shoot, and then you could get a certain amount of tickets if you got it here or here. I miss those games
Oh
a
yeah, those
lot.
gambling games. They still have those at like Chuck E. Cheese and stuff, man. We definitely played. Except you swipe your card now, and then it gives you a few tokens to pop in the machine to play. But yeah, we definitely spend too much money on those when we go into arcades. You know the ones that push the tokens to the edge, and you try to like get as many tokens over the edge as you can.
Yeah, coin
Yeah,
pushers.
coin pushers. We are addicted to coin pushers. It's bad. Like we'll sit there and just drop like 20 tokens into those things. But that's all.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, for
but
sure.
that's all besides the point. But getting back to arcades, man, we had a. Do you remember? You might not remember this. I don't know if anyone does because it's like it's gone. Like it's completely gone from the world. But do you happen to remember that there used to be Nathan's restaurants, like Nathan's fast food restaurants? Yeah, it
No.
was Nathan's Hot Dogs, but it was like a fast food place. That might be like a Northeast thing too, because I know Nathan's was a New York brand. But we had a Nathan's where it was a restaurant in the front, but fast food. Obviously, you could get crinkle fries, and the crinkle fries were really good. I still remember those. There's some good crinkle fries, and you get burgers and hot dogs and stuff like that. Obviously, the hot dogs were the flagship menu item, right? But in the back, they had the game room, and that was my arcade. That was my go-to arcade growing up. That place was amazing, and then with the years they grew and they had some of the Neo Geo cabinets that had the multiple games in them, the MVS cabinets, which I love and I want one so bad, and pinball games, a lot of Stern tables like with Terminator 2 and stuff like that, and Adam's Family, all those amazing pinball games. And what was really cool and really weird about that is that when the Nathan's restaurant closed, the game room actually stayed open for a couple of years, which is kind of surprising.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that building is like a Zwanger Pasiri now. It's like a radiology place. I feel like if anyone listens to this, they're gonna like listen to things I'm saying right now and figure out where I live, like very easily. Uh,
Right.
yeah, but that was it, and I mean, there we had a few great arcade places. Did you guys? Now I know. Right now you live in Michigan. Did you grow up? But you grew up somewhere else, right? Didn't you grow up in Georgia or something like that?
No, I grew up in
Hmm.
Michigan. I did move to Alabama for
Alabama.
a year, but then I moved back to Michigan. So yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, the Midwest area, and so yeah, for us, we really never had
Yeah.
Nathan's. By us, we have some of their products now in our
Yeah, the hot
grocery
dogs are
stores,
a
like
big deal.
the hot dogs and the pickles and
Yeah.
stuff. But other than that, but we had a place called the Pizza Ranch, and man, that place was awesome. They had this arcade room, and they had such great pizza. And then you could go and you could play the games that they had in there. Sometimes they'd have
Hmm.
pinball, but they had the one racing game where you sat down and it was the main racing game that everyone had. It had a low high shift lever, and you were driving a Formula One car around a track. And they had that. They had Turtles. They had X Men. They had such good. But as far as I know, to this day, they're still open.
That's cool.
They don't have the arcade anymore, but they do have the Pizza Ranch is still around.
Yeah, I was
So
deeply disappointed the other a couple weeks ago. I was in Connecticut. I was in Mystic, and there's this beer garden that we went to, and I'm like, oh, this is great beer garden, and it had a little door. It said game room above the door, and I was like, ooh, that's exciting. And I went in there, and there was like one Ms. Pac-Man slash Galaga machine, one Crane game that did not work, and a Black Knight pinball table, and that was their game room. We had fun on the pinball table though. That was fun. It's a good table. Oh, I don't know if you are aware of this, Jared. There's Pinball FX3 on Steam. I love that thing, man. They have a
okay,
bunch of the old they don't have the Stern tables. They have the other I think the Midway or Bally tables. Is it Bally? I don't remember. They have a lot of those tables, and then there's a bunch of like virtual tables that they created for the Pinball FX game. I mean, most of the tables are DLC. It only comes with a handful of tables, but they have like Monster Jam and they have Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's really cool, and yeah, you should check that out if you like pinball. We were in Virginia not that long ago, and we were at this place, the Precarious Brewing Company, and they have a whole row of pinball machines. They had this Iron Maiden pinball machine. So obviously I was very into that because I love Iron Maiden and I like pinball. And I put in $2, so I had like 6 credits or whatever. It started with a decent number of credits, and I kept on winning free games because I was getting pretty good at the pinball game. And like my food came, and I had to I just walked away from it, and some kid got to play like 2 free games.
nice.
So that was pretty good. That was pretty fun.
That's always a good
But did you
time.
guys have did you have any like
That
arcade spots when you were growing up? I know you were talking about the Pizza Ranch, but did you have any like
yeah,
arcade spots? Like I know Chuck E. Cheese obviously has always been around. Uh, but
yeah,
like for example, we had Spaceplex was a big one. I only ever went there once. I went to Spaceplex once for one of my birthdays. My friend Sean with my parents brought my friend Sean with me, and we just played video games all day. They had like the Dragon's Lair Laserdisc game. Remember the Dragon's Lair Laserdisc game? That's basically like an interactive movie, and you've just pressed the sword button at the
yep,
right
yep.
time. Which I actually played like a DVD of that game, which is kind of cool. Like you can get a DVD that is that game. But that I digress. Um, and they had probably one of the coolest things I ever saw. They had a Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition machine that had chairs, and like you could sit down in it. We
Nice.
didn't play because the line was really long and we wanted to do other stuff, but that was a really cool thing to see. I can't even begin to talk about like how popular Street Fighter 2 was at the time. If you were around at the time, Street Fighter 2 was an absolute phenomenon.
It was. It was as well as Mortal Kombat
Yeah.
because I was gonna say we had Craig's Cruisers, and it was a place where you could get go karts, and they had an arcade, they had bumper boats, mini golf, that kind of stuff, and it's still around my area. Craig's Cruisers is, and but anyway, the whole Mortal Kombat. I remember they got a Mortal Kombat 3 machine in, and or was it two? Either two or three. And I remember the line being so long that it was just like you could pretty much walk on the go karts and just go as much as you wanted because everybody was trying to play Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat was also an absolute phenomenon. That stayed that way for quite some time. And then Mortal Kombat 4 came out and nobody wanted to play it.
Right.
But yeah, it was absolutely mind-blowing for the first time to experience Mortal Kombat because that was a new thing at the time. We didn't have like games with blood and gore in them.
No,
That was
absolutely not. I
that didn't
mean,
happen.
Doom. You had Doom for PC in what 91, 92, something like that, and then you had Duke
I
Nukem.
think Doom was like 94. I think Doom was a little bit later.
Okay, okay, so maybe it was 94. And you also had Wolfenstein 3D as well from id
Right.
Software. So you had those games for PC, but it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't one of those big phenomenons like Mortal Kombat was. Would you say that Mortal Kombat changed the face of gaming in that
Oh
sense?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was one of the Doom also was part of it too, though. It was one of the major driving factors behind. Oh, I can't talk tonight. It was one of the major driving factors behind the ESRB coming into existence. Because before then, it was just kind of like they just would sell games, and nobody really thought too much of the content of the games. It was pretty much universally accepted that all games were for children. Full stop. Which is why it was such an outrage when these games came out. You had a game where you could tear someone's head off, and then you had another game where you would shoot demons in the face with a shotgun. And then you had another game that looked like a real life horror movie, and there's a scene where a girl gets snatched up in the bathroom while she's in her pajamas, and that was like, a major scandal. Meanwhile, Grand Theft Auto exists now, but back then it was, but this is for children. This is not acceptable. Not understanding that this was an entertainment medium that wasn't exclusively created and marketed for children. And these were games that were aimed more at like, teens and young adults. The ultimate the
Right.
ultimate decision being, look, if the government promises not to tell people they can't buy our stuff, we'll regulate ourselves. We'll put ratings on things so parents can completely ignore them, and we'll police ourselves and our own activities. And I think for the most part, up until recently, last 10, 15 years maybe, uh, no one paid attention to those ratings, which is why you had completely
No.
inappropriate games being played by young kids. But that's a whole other conversation. That's something we care about a lot more, I think, now as parents than we probably ever did back then. Like as kids or even as like single adults, you don't think about it too much. You're like, oh, whatever, it's just a violent video game, who cares? But then you have kids and you're like, yeah, I don't want my kid playing that.
Right. Exactly. It's funny how perspective changes as we
Yeah.
age.
Like I have all these like retro devices and I have Mortal Kombat games on them and Doom and stuff, and I'm like, make sure my son doesn't touch this unless I'm watching him.
Right. I remember. Did you ever get a chance to play the Vectrex?
No, I don't think so. It sounds familiar, but I don't think I ever got a chance to play.
Oh man, my uncle had one. It was basically like a giant arcade
Okay.
cabinet, but it was a computer. I played Asteroids on it a
Okay.
lot.
So for vector games. All
Yeah.
right.
hmm It was really fun. I remember that. And then my buddy's dad had Tempest,
I loved
and
Tempest.
I remember playing. Oh, Tempest was such a great game. The little roller, and you'd roll around one side or the other, and you take out your enemies, and oh,
Tempest is
that was a
Tempest
good
is an
game.
excellent game. That stuff, yeah. Those vector games, man, they don't make. I mean, obviously, don't make games like that anymore. But vector games were a lot of fun. Battlezone, I think, was another really, really good one. Where you have the tank that you're driving around in, and it was literally just like green lines on a screen, but it gave like an illusion of 3D. It was cool. And I think Tempest made a big comeback when the Jaguar came out because they released a version of Tempest on the Jaguar, which was such a weird choice to try and like showcase the Jaguar. I don't know. Like, here, hey, we have the world's first 64-bit console. Here's a vector game from 10 years ago. But I mean, what do I know? I mean, obviously they knew what they were doing because the Atari as a company went completely out of business shortly thereafter. So what the hell do I know?
Right, exactly.
The company, the company name Atari still exists, which is funny, but it's not. It has nothing to do with the original company. Like some other company bought all the trademarks and stuff. So it's not.
Exactly.
It's not. It's not the same company like at all. There's no piece of that company remaining anymore.
Oh, you mean the company that caused the great video game crash of 1984?
Yes, the company that basically allowed the market to be flooded with poor quality games to such an astonishing degree that it completely tanked the whole industry. Yes. And then Nintendo went the extreme opposite, and basically the reason why we're here having this conversation today and making this podcast, really. Because if it weren't for Nintendo bringing out the NES and making pretty strict rules that prevented the market from being flooded with shovelware, there would never have been a Genesis or a PlayStation or any of that stuff. It would have been over. It would have been
absolutely.
I was going to tell you before. I have a sad story about Ninja Turtles on the NES. My Ninja Turtle game got stolen. It got stolen. Yeah, it got stolen on my desk at school because I was a dumb kid that brought his video games to school. I don't know why I did that. I don't remember like what the context was of why I brought the game into school. Because like, why would you bring a Nintendo game into school? So I don't know. Maybe I was trying to just show it off or something. I have no. Maybe it's like a show and tell. I don't know. But for some reason, I had it in school, and then I went to recess and I came back and it was gone. And I know who took it. But you know.
Yeah, true.
I know which kid took it. I got a pretty good idea. Nothing I can do about it now.
Right.
Not the first time either that someone tried to steal my Ninja Turtle game. One time I brought it over to a friend's house, and on the way home, some random kid like tried to steal it from me. I had to like chase him down and get it back. I had to chase this kid and get my game back.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said you had a rather sad story about Ninja Turtles?
That was it. That was the sad story.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That is sad.
Yeah. It got stolen. I mean, now, you know, obviously I can play it as much as I want, but that was sad at the time.
Definitely.
Actually, I think that was actually TMNT 2 that was stolen, I think. Pretty sure.
Do you remember the feeling you got when you beat Final Fantasy for the first time?
Yeah. And I think that's the first game that I ever beat. But yeah, that was quite a feeling of accomplishment because you work really hard. I mean, nowadays after having played so many RPGs that are so long, it probably doesn't seem like much. The game's like you could finish that game in about like less than 20 hours. But it was a chore, and to get to the end and defeat Chaos and actually see those credits roll. Yeah, that felt like an accomplishment, especially since you had to defeat the boss of the Nintendo randomly glitching out on you and giving you the blinking blue screen every once in a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, I felt the same way when I beat Ninja Gaiden the first time. When I beat that demon statue and beat that 3-boss gauntlet, oh my gosh, my heart was racing. I thought it was going to pound out of my chest.
I beat Ninja Gaiden for the first time in like 2019.
I was 8, I think.
I was 38.
It was one of the games that I had, and it was one of those things where I was getting frustrated because of that glitch, where if you die at the boss, you have to start over at 6-1. Mm-hmm. But then you go back to the boss, and you automatically start back at whatever boss you left off on. So I remember beating the first portion of it where you had to attack the gem, and then I got very close to defeating Jakio and did not beat him and got really mad and frustrated But then I said, all right, we're going to do this. So then I went through again, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then got to the bosses again. And this time I had all my weapon charge yet and everything, so I was able to beat him. And then it was just the demon statue. And as long as you took out the tail first, then you could go after the heart. And you want to go after the head too. So if you got rid of the head and you got rid of the tail, then the heart was just the last part, and then you just had to dodge the fireballs that it was shooting at you.
I'm trying to remember if I even beat Ninja Gaiden honestly, or if I used save states. I think I might have used some save states. Because I think I decided that the bug at the end of the game that sends you back to 6-1 is unfair. So
Oh, absolutely.
So I think I had a save state, like right before the boss that I refreshed a few times until I got the boss down. And thank goodness for emulation and save states. There are a lot of games I don't think I ever could have finished without them.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I ever beat Ghosts and Goblins without save states.
Because you got to beat it twice. You have to beat it twice, and it's hard. It's harder the second time. It's virtually impossible the first time. Have you played that Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection or Rebirth, whatever the hell it's called?
I have it for Switch.
Yeah, that game is ridiculous. Like, that game is even harder than the old ones were.
Yeah. I remember making it through a couple levels.
You made it through a couple levels? You're like a glorious golden god. I made it through one. And barely.
I made it through.
I had to put it on easy mode, and I got through one level.
2 or 3 levels on easy, and I'm like, this is for the birds, man. I mean, I am getting destroyed.
There's such a thing as a game being too hard, and that game's too hard. That's a little bit ridiculous. Even if you want a game that's like old school Nintendo hard, nah, man, that game is too hard. It's not worth the aggravation. So I don't really play it anymore. Oh, you know what? It's a pretty good. I think it's a really good gaming story though. Because you made me think of this with Ghosts and Goblins, and obviously Super Ghosts and Goblins, which is a game that I got later on. But the way that my parents gave me the Super Nintendo is kind of a cool story. Because obviously, I was a Nintendo kid through and through by that point. Pretty much nothing I'd rather do at any given time than play Nintendo. And the only thing that I wanted in the world for Christmas of 1991, I think it was the Super Nintendo. That is the only thing that I wanted. Maybe it was 92 now that I'm thinking, because I think in 91 it wasn't out yet. I don't remember. But whatever that Christmas was, that it was released like shortly before, because I think it came out like September of that year or something like that. That's all I wanted in the world was a Super Nintendo. And Christmas Eve night came, and we started this thing in my house as a kid. I think a lot of families do this. We started opening presents on Christmas Eve. And it was like we did this one year where it was like, can we open one present? And then it became, oh, fine, just open them all,
Yeah, yep, that's kind of how my family rolled.
So we opened all our presents up, and I completely had forgotten about the Super Nintendo by the time we had opened everything up. Because my parents, they were very good to us on that Christmas. I remember. I think it was a good year for them or whatever. So, I got a lot of cool stuff, a lot of toys. I was very happy with everything that I got. And like at the very end of the evening, when everyone had opened all their stuff, everyone was playing with their new toys and whatnot, there was one more box under the tree, and it said, "To Bruce," that's my dad's name, "from Santa." And I'm like, that's kind of cool. Dad got a present from Santa. That never happens. And my dad takes it and says, "You know what? I think you should have this one." And I was like, I was a kid. I was like 9 or 10 or whatever. I'm like, "No, Dad, this is obviously yours. You should hold on to that." And he said, No, I really think you should have this one. Like, I was such a sweet, nice kid. I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize it was like intentionally doing, So I'm like, okay, I guess. And then I opened it, and of course it was the Super Nintendo. And, that made my life at that point.
Absolutely.
And my mom was like, "Are you surprised?" I was like, "Yeah." "Were you disappointed that you thought I didn't get it?" And I was like, honestly, I kind of forgot. I kind of forgot about it. But that was a really great way to do that. That way they knew it was the last present I was going to open. They knew it was the thing I wanted more than anything else in the world. And, it didn't get overshadowed by anything else, because it was the finale of that Christmas, you know.
Right, most definitely.
And then, of course, like 5 years later, I sold all my Super Nintendo games to buy a PlayStation.
Right.
Which, I'm sad sometimes about that because I look now, like I looked the other day, because not only did I sell all my Super Nintendo games to buy a PlayStation when I was 15, but then like when I was in college, I sold all my PlayStation and PS2 games because I needed money for like books and stuff.
Right.
So I sold all of that stuff. And then I was looking like recently at my eBay because I sold a video card, so I was looking at my eBay feedback and stuff, and I was looking at some of the games that I sold and how much money I sold them for and how much they're going for now. And I had games that I sold for like $5, $10, $3, and they're all going for like 25, 30, 40, 50 bucks now. It's and they're games that I would rather have. Like I actually went back and bought like the whole Final Fantasy series again because I wanted to have it. But this was like it's depressing. Like Front Mission 3, I sold for $5. You can't get that for less than like $40 now.
Oh
Legend of
man.
Dragoon, Legend of Legaia, Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, Vagrant Story, and then like there were all the games that I sold for my Super Nintendo that I wish I still had. I had Doom, I had Killer Instinct, I don't know. Obviously I had Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which I bought Final Fantasy 2 again, but I just bought just a loose cartridge because if you want the whole thing with the box and the manual, you're looking at like $200, $300.
Right.
So yeah. But hey, the PlayStation was the first console I ever bought with my own money. I was like 16. It was the first game
Okay.
console I ever bought with my own money. My own money that I got mostly by selling games that were purchased for me, but still. I think the PS2 is the first console I ever bought with money that I earned. So that was kind of a different story.
Yeah, I mean, but see, I mine was a PS2.
Yeah.
First console I ever bought was a PS2.
Yeah, with money for me, it was like that was the first time I bought with money that I earned, and the only reason I even bought it because really at that point in my life, like I wasn't playing that much video games, believe it or not. Uh, Final Fantasy VII and Symphony of the Night, and like RPGs. I was really just playing RPGs at that point, and I held off but then once they announced Final Fantasy X, then I had to get a PlayStation 2 because I had to have Final Fantasy X. There's really
Right.
really no getting around it. And I just remember being absolutely blown away by the massive gulf in improvement from the PS1 to the PS2. Like it was night and day. I remember playing like Devil May Cry, which I still like. I don't even like that game that much, but I remember playing that game and just being in absolute awe of how that game looked. I mean, by today's standards, it looks like absolute garbage, but back then, that was nothing short of groundbreaking. It was incredible. My mind was completely blown.
Capcom did an
Yeah.
incredible job there on that game,
Yeah.
making it look the way it
Yeah.
did.
And let me tell you, I was broke too at that time. I did not have a lot of money, but I put the money away for the goddamn PlayStation 2 to play Final Fantasy X. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And then like for a while I was really into anything that had like ninjas or samurai in it. And there's a lot of great games like that on PS2, like Tenshu and Way of the Samurai. Those were great. And
Do you remember the bouncer?
I remember the Bouncer. That was the first Square game that came out for the console. I didn't play it at the time. I didn't actually play that until like a couple years ago. But that's a game that's hard to play now because if you play it in an emulator, it doesn't work properly. That's one of the few games where it actually has like pressure sensitive buttons. Like you press it
Gotcha.
light, you get like a regular attack. You press it hard, you get like a power attack. But if you don't have like an actual DualShock 2 controller, like that pressure sensitivity does not work. So like every button does like a spin kick, so it's actually really hard to play without the original hardware. I actually do have a PlayStation 2 here. I just don't have like a TV that I can hook it up to. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So that kind of stinks.
For sure.
Oh, and then I told the PS3 that it can kick rocks because I was about to spend $600 on a game console. Well, I needed a computer for school anyway, so I went that way.
Gotcha. But I want to thank you guys for joining us for today's episode. It was a good time reminiscing some of the past and just thinking about arcades and some of the things that we used to do. Dan, you got anything new with your new YouTube channel?
I'm actually taking a little bit of a lull right now because I have some stuff in the works, but nothing is ready to go just yet. I'm working on a big retrospective on the Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together game. There's actually a updated remake version of that coming out soon. And I went back and I played the Super Famicom, fan translation, and I really liked it at first. And then it got really tedious really fast. And I decided I would check out the other versions of it, and the PSP version is so radically different from the Super Famicom and PlayStation versions. So I'm playing that right now, and I'm debating whether I want to continue playing that. I definitely want to do a video just comparing the different versions and talking about the differences between them. Largely because I was really impressed with how this game was essentially like a prequel to Final Fantasy Tactics. So I wanted to talk a lot about that. But that's a work in progress. I have a lot more playing to do to get. I don't know if I want to finish the game or not. I'm on the fence with that. But yeah. And I have a couple other things I want to do. I wanted to do a video about Final Fantasy VII Remake and the character balancing in that game. So that's something. I wrote a script for that one already. Because what's impressive about Final Fantasy VII Remake is that they balance the different characters in a way that in the original Final Fantasy they didn't and couldn't. So that's something I wanted to discuss. And yeah, apart from that, I have a few different topics that I'm kind of workshopping right now. Not sure too much, what I'm going to commit to and not, but I have a nice big long list of different stuff that I want to do. So that's kind of where I'm at with the channel. But as of right now, nothing new coming out for a little while. I have some gameplay videos, some old gameplay videos that I'm going to publish just to have something out there on the channel that, if people want to watch it, they can. Until I get that Tactics Ogre video squared away. Probably nothing new for a little while yet.
Right. So, yep, and I want to thank you for listening to us and following us on our social medias, facebook.com/The Console Kingdom, YouTube, The Console Kingdom Podcast.
Yeah, let us know you're out there, guys. We want to hear from you. Let us know you're out there, what you think of the show. Give us a review on iTunes if you're listening on iTunes, whatever platform you're listening on. If you can give us a rating or review, and share the podcast. Let people know about it. Share it in your favorite social media groups and stuff like that. Help us get out there. Because, yeah, we're trying to build the audience, trying to grow the audience, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there who would be interested in hearing what we have to say, but we got to find that audience, and if you can help us out with that, that'll be appreciated.
Much love and appreciation for sure. For sure. So my name is Jared.
And I'm Dan.
And you guys have a fantastic week, and game on.